We say all praises be to the Creator, all power to his people. In the name of Yahshua, the Black Revolutionary Messiah, I greet you, my brothers and sisters, in the spirit of truth and the words of peace. Shalom Aleichem. Tonight on the Main Source Network show, we're going to be dealing with a very controversial topic that has been going on in the black community for the last, since 1960s really, and even before that, but especially since 1961, 1962, dealing with the topic of whether black people should vote, or more specifically, the emphasis that we put on voting, because a lot of people try to sell us on the idea if we go and pull a lever, and I think Dr. Khalid used to call it the glorified shower curtain every 4 years for most of us, or every 2 years, then all of our problems as African people will eventually just go away. We don't have to protest. We don't have to do anything besides vote every 4 years, really. And then if we do that, all our problems are going to go away. So tonight, we're going to go into the topic when we start talking about the voting situation. Is it politics or Poli-Tricks? Is it politics or Poli-Tricks? And we're going to be going into depth in regards to the situation of whether we should even vote. Should we consider voting? Is voting too hyped up in America today when it comes to black people? Now, we know it's always worked for white people, but the question is, has it worked or is it working for black people? And I think that most of you all will say, no, it has not worked for black people. So we're going to be going to that history tonight. I'm going to open the conversation in a few minutes for everybody to chime in. But we're waiting for a couple of calls on the line who I've invited to take. Everybody's important on the line, but I invited 2 people to call in, especially tonight. I want to know if those callers are on the line, Brother Rashid and Brother John Kemet Bass. Are you on the line, Shabazz?
Yes, sir. Peace, Brother Paul. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm here on the line, brother. And do you want me to make my comment now, or should I wait for
okay. This is Brother Shabazz?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I appreciate that, brother. Thank you for calling in. And wanted to, let's jump right into it. Let's jump right into it as far as putting it as a question. Do you think, brother, that voting as it stands in 2014 is even relevant to black people?
Well, first off the top, I would say no, because more often than not, we can't find nobody that represents our best interests. So voting doesn't have any substance. But then I would say yes, because there are instances where we have had people like Adam Clayton Powell in Harlem that represented the best interests of black people. With the brother in Chicago, Harold Washington, represented the best interests of black people, and even Maynard Jackson in Atlanta. Some might say he didn't, but others would say that he represented the interests of black people, and they made gains during their terms of office. So when it comes to voting, again, first off, I would say no. But if you can find somebody who represents your interests, then I would say voting can be used as a tool to make progress. So you understand what I'm saying, where I'm going at with this, Brother Paul?
Yes, sir. I think it was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad who said that as well. I think he told the Nation of Islam back in the day that, they didn't really encourage voting. But if they find a politician like Adam Clayton Powell to vote, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. He did say that, and I would want to go a little bit further and admit to you that I voted for Barack Obama in 2008 myself because it was something different to be able to see a black man's face up in the White House. Even though we had concerns about it, we knew that would change. We felt that would change the system on the inside, would force the system to have to adjust to seeing a black face in the White House. Okay, in 2012, I didn't vote for him because I was upset about the bombing of Libya, the killing of Gaddafi, and so that experiment ended for me by 2012. And so now I'm looking at it that, you know, you can put a bear or ant or anything up in the spot as president, and the system would keep rolling the same way it's been rolling. And so the only vote that I would vote for now is a plebiscite vote to determine our destiny as a people independent of America. Okay, and I hope we can get to that. I'd ask for a brother like you to go a little bit deeper into that, right, if you could, because the plebiscite vote was something that was put to us by the original Black Panther Party in point number 10. And I had the opportunity to interview Malik Zulu Shabazz back in 2007 when I went to Jamestown, and I asked him about that. And we have not got to that point to determine whether or not we as a people are ready to separate from these devils that have been doing what they have been doing to us and denying it, you know. So that's my position, you know.
Yeah, that's the thing, Brother Shabazz. We never had a plebiscite, really, to see if we even really wanted to be part of the system. It was always presented to us in such a way that, okay, be glad that you're part of the system, you know, you finally made it, yada, yada, yada. So let me go into a little history on that, if you don't mind, brother. I want everybody to study. And, you know, I always try to bring my sources. An important book is Bearing the Cross. Bearing the Cross by David J. Garrow, a book called Bearing the Cross, Martin Luther King and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And what this book talks about, it really goes into the scam that was run by the Kennedy brothers, John and Robert Kennedy, back in the early 1960s when Kennedy first got in office. And a man named Stephen Currier of the Tuconic Foundation. Now, back in around 1960, 1961, they got together and they came up with a plan where they said that they were going to channel the energy away from direct activism and put that energy into voting. You know, it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't any kind of coincidence that once people started voting, that you begin to see the actual push towards the even nonviolent resistance being replaced by voting. So it became what it is today. Okay, just go vote. You don't have to protest. Even when you see a Trayvon Martin situation, you see a Mike Brown situation that has nothing really whatsoever to do with voting. What they put forth towards the people is vote. Everything that goes on in the community, okay, it can be solved by voting. But this goes back to the early 1960s with the Kennedy brothers. And their thing was, you know, if we can, the compromise is we'll keep them out in the street, we'll make them vote, and not only will we let them vote or make them think that voting is a blessing from heaven, we're also going to let them vote for the Democrats and have the Democrats as a salvation. So if you trace that history, and once again going back to the book, Bearing the Cross by David J. Garrow, it would talk about the Kennedy brothers and their scam. Now, I read another book, brother, in Racial Matters by Kenneth O'Reilly, and that's a book everybody should read. Racial Matters by Kenneth O'Reilly. He deals with the fact that the mentality of the Kennedy brothers and their thinking was, even though a lot of African people think they were like the second coming, you know, our best friends. You look on back in the day, if you look on the walls of many houses, you would see a white Jesus, Martin Luther King, and the Kennedy brothers on the wall, side by side. But according to Kenneth O'Reilly, in his book Racial Matters, he said that it was the thinking of the Kennedy brothers that Reconstruction kind of provoked Southern white people. That's why he was kind of soft on really going after those Southern races, because in his mind, his mentality was they pushed during Reconstruction, America made a mistake by pushing the South too far and provoking the South. And it was the fault of the politicians and black folks of pushing the South too fast that resulted in the end of Reconstruction. So that's the mentality he came to office with, brother. So I think it was important to come up with, for us rather, to bring up this situation so we can put in the proper context of how this whole idea of voting really came to pass.
Yes, sir. Well, I want to add on to that and tell you that I read Chancellor Williams' book, Destruction of Black Civilization, and toward the middle or the end of it, he talked about voting was an illusion and that we had to set up a system that was in our best interest. And he gave, as I remember, he gave an outline of what we should do. And again, he went further to say voting was an illusion and that voting was something that came from over in the European feudal system, that they had set up a feudal system of the peasants and the nobles, and periodically the peasants would rise up and take over. They would rise up against the nobility class. So voting was a trick that they implemented to be able to pacify the peasant class and make them think it was an illusion of power, that by voting, as you were saying earlier, by voting you could clear up your problems and so forth, but the nobility class still remained in office. And that's what we're dealing with today, you know. So you named the show right, Politics or Poli-Tricks.
Yeah, what they say, the names, the faces change, but the game remains the same. The faces may change and the names may change, but the game remains the same. That game has never been good for African people. Brother, right now we're going to be joined by Brother Khalid Raheem. Brother Khalid Raheem, who's active, very active, and just started actually a new political party. So we're definitely glad to have him on the show. You're on with me and Brother John Kemet Shabazz. Peace, Brother Khalid.
Peace to you, brother. Thank you for asking me to be able to join your show this evening. Greatly appreciate the honor. Greatly appreciate the opportunity.
Peace, brother.
Yes, sir. Peace. And I want to get you to jump right in on that, brother. And the question I put to Brother Shabazz was the same one I'm going to put towards you. In 2014, do you believe that voting is the answer for African people? Are we talking about politics or Poli-Tricks?
Well, I don't think that voting by itself is the solution. We're talking about freedom and justice and self-determination or group determination for black New African people. But I think that voting certainly has to be considered strategically and tactically. And I do agree that unfortunately, since around the 1960s, the mid to late 1960s, the black community for the most part has developed this idea, an illusion that all we have to do is register to vote and cast our votes and everything is going to be okay. We have a tendency to minimize the importance of mass struggle, the importance of community organizing and activism, and being an advocate to represent our own best interests. The other part of it is that, unfortunately, we have a black political class that is not very strong and tenacious in terms of putting forward the things that could benefit the black New African community. Oftentimes, they're tied into the Democratic Party, and a handful are tied into the Republican Party, but most are tied into the Democratic Party. And they basically see themselves as the partners within the Democratic Party as opposed to being the advocates for the best interests of the collective black New African community. So I don't think that politics alone is the solution or answer, but I think that politics should certainly be considered strategically and tactically. I think we should take nothing off the table, from voting to marching, protesting, demonstrating, or throwing rocks and bricks. I think we got to consider everything.
Yes, sir. Like Brother Malcolm said, by any means necessary. Excellent points. Brother Shabazz, your thoughts? What the brother just said?
Yeah, I was listening to him and to the brother and respect due, but I think many of our people overemphasize voting, and then some of our people have been injured by the voting process. I remember back in, I think the second time Bush was elected, when that was the time where we had to wait for the Supreme Court decision. I don't know if you all remember that or not, where we had to wait for the Supreme Court decision, and the Supreme Court ruled 4-5, as I remember, and Bush had lost the popular vote, but the Supreme Court ruled and put him in office, put him back in office again.
Right.
So, you know, I don't know. I with this voting thing, after seeing Barack Obama and everything that he's went through, you know, people are saying, or the media is saying, that, well, he's just laying low to be able to get through his term, and once he's done with his term, he's done. His attorney general has dropped off, and his popularity is gone. I don't know with this voting, man. I just don't see no real power in it on the national level. It just appears to be a grand illusion. And
yeah,
So
yeah, I think that you do make some valid points in terms of political power on a national level, but I think that for our people, we need to focus on how we can exercise political power on a local level. For example, the New African Independence Party, our primary focus is on organizing people to be able to exercise some political power locally. Their school boards, making some determination about the school board curriculum, making some determination about the staff, the personnel, making some determination about the contracts that are going to be awarded through the school board or through the school district. We also want people to focus on getting political power locally when it comes to their city council, when it comes to their county council, and even perhaps their state representative. So we're not trying to push people to run for the presidency of the United States, but we certainly want people to run and to support one another locally. And when people talk about politics, in the party, we define politics as the struggle over the acquisition and distribution of power and resources. And so if you pay taxes, any type of tax, right, if you live within the city, if you live within the county, then you should be able to exercise some type of control over how your tax dollars are going to be used. Okay, you should be able to have some say-so over whether or not your garbage is going to be picked up, or how the police are going to interact with folks from your neighborhood when they do have to come into your neighborhood. All those things are definitely politics. That's all political. So we don't discard politics because we say it's Poli-Tricks. What we do is we have a deeper definition of what is politics, and then we act on it accordingly.
Okay. I feel you on that, brother. I got a question for you, and given the fact that I'm here in West Virginia, okay, and we have various black officials and representatives and so forth, but most of those that get in office, right, a lot of times they don't want to hear anything coming from grassroots people. And my position is, how can we put some leverage on these politicians, on these black politicians, or any politician, to get some of the things that we need? What's the process? What's working for you all in your organization, brother?
Well, we believe that, and I'll put it out here to you and anybody within the listening audience. Join the New African Independence Party. Okay, we're a mass-based political party. Join our group. Go to newafrican.org, and that's African spelled with a K. Go to newafrican.org, check out the website, go to the page called Membership and Organization, and join the party. Go to your local Bureau of Elections, whatever you may call it, register as a member of the New African. Independence Party. If you can get together a certain number of people, we can talk about the process to certify your city or your area as a chapter. If you can find folks within your chapter or find folks within your area who are interested in running for political office, then let's talk about what their process would entail, okay? But the only way to put pressure on elected officials is to let them know that there's some alternatives. One of the things that has happened with the black community over the last several decades is that we do not have any political alternatives. We either vote for the Republican Party if we think there's some moderate Republicans, the so-called progressive Republicans within the Republican Party, or we stick with the Democrats. And the Democratic Party has done us a tremendous amount of harm because they take black people for granted. So they know that our vote is guaranteed, so they don't have to work as hard. They know that our vote is guaranteed, so they don't have to consider the real tough issues and tough questions that matter to us as black New African people. Okay?
Yes, sir.
The Republican Party, we know, is a party of white supremacy, but so is the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is likewise a political party based on white supremacy. It basically makes sure that the interests of the white ruling class is going to be protected and projected. And so in order for us to do anything different on a local level, we have to challenge them. We have to challenge their right to rule over us. And you can only do that by organizing. You can't do it just by getting angry. You can't do it by kicking up rhetoric. You can only do it by organizing amongst yourselves and developing an independent political entity that can challenge the power at the local level.
Well, let me interject, brother, and let me ask you both this question. Both of you have talked about the two-party system. The two-party system, whether they're having to choose between the jackass or the elephant, as they say. Both of them have either abused African people or taken African people for granted. You will hear the right-wing Republicans say, they always throw that little trick thing they do. Well, the Republicans were the party of Lincoln. Lincoln set your people free. You all should vote Republican because of Abraham Lincoln. But everybody should read that book by Lerone Bennett, Forced into Glory, by Dr. Lerone Bennett, where he picks apart the fallacy of how good Lincoln was to African people. So once again, write that book down, Forced into Glory, by Dr. Lerone Bennett. He does an excellent job. But the thing that they don't talk about when they make their argument about the Republicans is you're not talking about a specific name. You're talking about a conservative agenda. That's that little trick thing they use with us, that little sleight of hand. They get us talking about Republican versus Democrat, but you're talking about a conservative agenda that has been in both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. That conservative agenda has not changed because the conservative agenda says we're going to conserve what we have. White men are going to conserve what they have. That's why the Republican Party has been white supremacist and the Democratic Party has been white supremacist. If you remember, it was the Dixiecrats who were just as racist as the Republicans in their worst day. So we have to be clear with that. Malcolm X called that out, talking about the Dixiecrats who were just as racist as the Republicans back in the day. So I wanted to throw, since we're talking about that two-party system, would it be feasible, brothers? And Brother Shabazz, I'm going to get you to jump in first. Then I'm going to go back to Brother Khalid. Would it be feasible to urge our people to leave the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, especially the Democratic Party, and go independent? Brother Shabazz first.
Absolutely, I agree. I've been voting. I've been voting since the mid '90s, and I registered as an independent at that time. And I had people in my church saying, why do you register as the independent? At that time, black people were really not looking at being independents. But, you know, I had read the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I said, well, I don't want to be a Democrat or a Republican, so I'm going to have to go with an independent. But I was in Pennsylvania at that time. I found myself dealing with, well, if you're an independent, you can't vote in the Democratic primary, and there were some blacks that were running for office in the Democratic primary, and so there were certain type of stipulations that they had implemented in that area at that time, right? But without going into any deeper detail, I would say being an independent is exactly where we need to be. We have our own issues that have not been properly addressed and resolved. We got gross national disparities, regional disparities, as well as statewide disparities throughout every state in the union. So, yes, the independent party gives us an opportunity to have a platform to raise the issues that neither the Democrats or the Republicans will address. And if we have our own independent party, own independent platform, it's more likely that some of the Democrats and the Republicans will hear the issues and be moved to jump on board and support some of these issues, such as reparations and taxation, tax exemption, excuse me. So that's my position on that, brother. So.
Okay, thank you, brother. Brother Raheem, your thoughts, sir.
Well, my thoughts have already been made perfectly clear through my actions. The fact that I founded an independent political party for black and New African people. So I would always encourage people to consider joining the New African Independence Party. Once again, it's very easy to join. You could go online, www.newafrican, spelled with a K, newafrican.org. Go to membership and organization, that particular page, and you can join. Make sure you fill out all the areas with the asterisks that are mandatory areas to be filled out, and then just push the submit button, and your membership will be forwarded to our organization. Right now, we have members in 14 states and 18 cities across the country. So, you know, we're moving forward. Okay, we understand that everything is political. We understand that where you go to school, where you live, how the police interact with you and your community, whether your streets get cleaned, whether your trash gets picked up, all those things constitute politics. And so for us, we define politics as the struggle for the acquisition of power and the distribution of power and resources. And we also understand that politics is war without bloodshed. And so we know that we're engaged in a war, and we aim to use everything that we possibly can to obtain our freedom, liberation, and have an opportunity to express some self or group determination about where we should go from that moment on. So that's where we are. Let me go back and say just a few things to clarify some things, because I was listening very closely to the brother's comments. The Republican Party of Abraham Lincoln was indeed a militant and radical political party. The Republican Party of Abraham Lincoln was formed as a direct consequence of the issue of slavery, okay, because at that particular point in American history, there was a lot of back and forth in terms of the new territories or the new areas that would apply for statehood, whether they would come in as free territories or free states or slave states or slave territories. And so you had this new political formation that was put together called the Republican Party, which was an abolitionist political party. Even within the abolitionist political party called the Republican Party, some were more radical than others. For example, Lincoln wasn't necessarily one of the most radical Republicans, but he was a Republican. One of the most radical Republicans actually came from my state, the state of Pennsylvania. His name was Thaddeus Stevens. There was another radical Republican. I think his name was Sumner. Okay.
That's right.
So these were the radical white Republicans. These were the guys who advocated that slavery be abolished. They also advocated that the slaves get reparations. They also advocated that the slaves have not just their political freedom, but be given an economic base because of all the years of forced servitude and exploitation. Okay, so just to give you a little backdrop, black people, for the most part, have remained loyal Republicans for a few generations. up until around the time Franklin Roosevelt's administration, and not so much through the work of Franklin Roosevelt himself, but really through the work of his wife, Eleanor Roosevelt, and the meetings that she used to have with a lot of the black leadership at that particular time. People like Mary McLeod Bethune and other folks from the National League of Negro Women. She would meet with the black leadership, and she would talk to them about the issues and problems as they were trying to get help from the White House. So they developed a pretty cozy relationship, as relationships could be back in those days. That also fostered a certain type of political understanding about blacks supporting the Democratic Party, because once again, keep in mind, up until that point, this is around the time of the Great Depression, still the majority of black people were not Democrats, they were Republicans. When we move forward, we move past the Roosevelt administration, we moved to the administration of Truman, Harry Truman, who succeeded Roosevelt after he died. Harry Truman was the president who signed an executive order which ended segregation within the military. Okay, why is that significant? Because one of the things that was being discussed and being organized before he signed this executive order was a massive march on Washington, the original concept for the March on Washington, which was going to be led by one of the leaders of the black labor movement, a brother by the name of A. Philip Randolph. And he was the one who was organizing black leaders and black folks all across the country, especially black workers, right, to converge on Washington, D.C. and have this massive protest. To protest Jim Crow and to protest, discrimination, especially within the armed services. Keep in mind, this is post-World War II. How dare the United States try to project itself all around the world as a bastion for freedom and democracy and against fascism, while here at home they still practice local terrorism and state-sanctioned murder against its own citizens, many of whom served in the U.S. military during World War II, right? So this created a certain political climate that was unacceptable for the United States of America, because it was a slap in the face to the international image that it was trying to project. The U.S. at this particular moment was also in competition with the Soviet Union for the hearts and minds of people all around the world, especially the poor, the working class in Africa and Asia. So it was signed, executive order, ended Jim Crow segregation within the U.S. military. In return, more and more blacks started to gravitate towards the Democratic Party. The final piece was when John F. Kennedy was running for president, and he needed support, and his campaign started a few years after the historic boycott in Montgomery, Alabama, which led to the emergence of Dr. King and shed light on the civil rights movement. And there was an understanding that if King and his people and the folks that they could influence would support Kennedy and his campaign, that when the Kennedy brothers got in the White House, they would in turn do something to alleviate the plight of the Negro people, as we recall at that particular time. Kennedy, as we all know, was murdered. The final piece was Lyndon Johnson signing the historic civil rights bills in 1964 and 1965. Hence, in math, black people would hide in, like forever, into the Democratic Party. So this is how this thing happened. We have political education classes here in Pittsburgh, PA, right? And we talk about this. We talk about when it was that all black folks were Republicans and how did all black folks become Democrats for the most part. And these are some of the key points historically that led to that particular type of political development. So I just want to share that with you and share that with the listening audience, because this is very, very important. Black folks since then have been treating the Democratic Party as if it's our mother or something, like they can't do no wrong, right? And so we got to break that. We got to break that mindset. We got to move forward.
I agree, brother. And I want to encourage everybody to listen to Message to the Grassroots by Malcolm X. Many people have heard the first part of the speech but haven't listened to the speech in its entirety. The last 10 minutes of that speech, he breaks down thoroughly what you were just talking about as far as the Democratic Party and their dealings with the big sticks and the meeting they had with Steve Currier before the March on Washington at the Carlisle Hotel in New York, where they came up with this strategy to empower the Democratic Party and diffuse the activism that was taking place, especially in the southern states. So very important, brother. At this point, brothers, we're going to open up the lines to our callers, see if they have any comments that they would like to share. Going first to area code 864. Area code 864. Do you have anything you want to share, brother or sister? Area code 864. Okay. Moving all along. Going to area code 219. Area code 219. Do you have any comments? And welcome to the show. Area code 219. Okay, I guess everybody's just listening this evening. So we'll go back to our guests. And I want to bring up a point about the Democratic Party. Want to bring about the Democratic Party and their strategy that they have used to trick our people. One of the things that the Democrats have successfully used over the years is a concept called non-economic liberalism. Non-economic liberalism. And this was a concept that was engineered largely by Spingarn, Joel Spingarn of the NAACP, whereby he came up with this concept called non-economic liberalism, whereby the trade-off was you can try to integrate coffee counters, but you can never own the business. They came up with this feel-good ideology whereby it would keep us in perpetual slavery. And the Democratic Party has done this very ingeniously over the years as far as non-economic liberalism, and that strategy they've used. So if one of you brothers have a comment on non-economic liberalism, the floor is yours.
Well, I listened to what you said on that, Brother Paul, and I'd have to go take a deeper look on it, because you know how white folks is. They'll put together a phrase, and it look like one thing on the outside, and up underneath it, they're doing all types of stuff. And when I hear that phrase, that's exactly what I think of. So I really can't, I really can't expound too much on it, because I'd have to go study it and read up on it. And see, that's one of the things that we find ourselves dealing with their political system. On the outside, a candidate, through his PR, through his public relations, people might create themselves or create the appearance of being one way, but we don't know what that person represents. We don't know what substance that person has. You know, and so that's I'd want to go a little bit further and tell the brother that I was listening to what he had to say, and I appreciate him for setting up that independent African party, right? And I'm here in Morgantown, and I'm about a half an hour away from you, and I want to go to Pittsburgh and holler at you and sit down with you and see what you're doing, right, in terms of that party, right, because I don't see any hope in the Democrats or the Republicans, right, and we got to do something. We got to bring our people together. I want to ask you, do you support reparations?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, if you go online and you check out our national platform, we have those type of issues listed as part of our national platform. So we have a national platform that ties us all in to the issues that are meaningful and significant for us all around the country. So, we have issues that deal with reparations. We talk about freedom. We talk about dismantling white supremacy. Okay, we call for freedom for political prisoners, namely those political prisoners who came out of the Black Power, Black Liberation movement, as well as their allies and supporters. You know, so we have a national platform. We have a national platform that is very much a radical revolutionary document. But we also say that wherever you are locally, you have to develop your own local agenda, because it's your local agenda and the politics behind it that has to drive your party locally. Okay, but we provide a framework through our national platform.
Yes, sir. A question that I do have is, how does your party come off in Pittsburgh? How are the blacks in Pittsburgh responding to it?
The blacks in Pittsburgh are responding slowly but well. You know, this is not something we wanted to just throw out there. So gave it a lot of thought, developed a lot of perspectives, talked to some people before we launched the organization, or before I officially launched the organization. And slowly but surely, folks are joining, folks are coming in. We think that's the best approach, because we don't want people to find themselves joining this organization just out of some type of emotionalism. We want people to join the organization because they recognize that it's time for such an organization to exist and that they're willing to support it. So we wanted to build a little bit at a time. And fortunately, we've been blessed in that regard, as I said earlier. You know, we don't have thousands and thousands of members, but right now we've been able to attract people from 14 different states around the country and several cities from around the country. And so it's a good start. It's a very good beginning.
Yes, sir. Any of your oh, I was getting ready to ask.
I just wanted to say, brother, for the last 15 minutes, we're going to open up all the lines. So anybody who's holding on the line and would like to voice an opinion or ask a question, please join in. Okay, Brother Shabazz.
I just wanted to ask him, in terms of your local politicians, your black politicians that may be Democrat or Republican, have you had any contact with them? What is their position with your independent party?
Well, personally, I've always had contact with groups of politicians here within Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. Okay, on a personal level, that's through work I've done over the years, being a community organizer, being an activist, starting nonprofits, managing nonprofits, and my personal background. So I've been in contact with local politicians, black politicians, as well as white politicians. So far, no one of them has personally responded to this new formation. Okay, now I'm sure they know about it, and knowing how most people think about something like this, you know, they know about it, they've heard about it, they probably went to the website, they probably read some of the stuff that's been posted through social media, and they probably said to themselves, oh, yeah, right. You know what I mean? They probably just summarily dismissed this, because that's the way most folks are. People in power have a tendency to become arrogant people, and they dismiss threats. They dismiss opposition because oftentimes they see the threat or they see the opposition as just minimal. So they shrug you off or they laugh you off. But that's okay. We've been developing, building a little bit at a time. Our focus is educating people locally. Our focus is to develop power locally, and our focus is to challenge the powers that be in terms of leadership and their right to rule over our communities and neighborhoods.
Yes, sir.
Very excellent points and very powerful show. We've touched on a lot of issues that a lot of people don't address because, once again, we're supposed to blindly just follow behind one party and just do whatever they say. So, but I want to shift the focus a little bit as we approach our last segment, dealing with the idea of black leadership. Black leadership. Now, historically, ever since the days of Frederick Douglass, America has looked for that one black leader. That's all they needed. They needed one person to speak for all black people. And that went on, and this was very much the case with Booker T. Washington and his Tuskegee machine. Booker T. Washington became a power broker. And anything they said that had to do with black people, everything had to go through Booker T. Washington. He, according to various papers and research, they used his Tuskegee machine to really destroy his opposition, or at least keep the opposition out of his way. So as we're in 2014, how do you all see this one black leader situation manifesting itself in America today? Because it's my contention that, you know, as long as they have one black person to point to, they're satisfied, who speaks for all black people. And it's not really the idea of how many people vote, but how many, your real power, as far as they're concerned, is how many people you can influence to vote. I want to say that again. Their real power, their real concern is when they're looking at the activists, their thing is not how many people vote, but how many people can you get to vote. And if you can get a certain amount of people to vote, you then become a power broker, and they deal with you. Your thoughts on that, brother?
Well, you know, brother, actually, the reason for that, the reason that they focus on the number of people that you can influence to vote is precisely why we raise the issue of developing an independent political party. Because if that's their definition of legitimate black leadership, i.e., who can influence the most black people to vote, then the other end of that is who can influence the most black people to vote for whom. And the answer to that oftentimes is the Democratic Party. Okay? And so you're absolutely correct. The system will designate you as the so-called black leader or black spokesperson, depending on how many people you can influence to vote for the Democratic Party, or how many people you can dissuade from voting for the Republican Party. All right? And that's false. That's a false definition of genuine black or new African leadership. Okay? First of all, we don't believe that leadership is singular. We think leadership is collective. All right? That's point number one. That true leadership is a collective phenomenon. Yes, you're going to have individual leaders, and yes, certain people are going to have more influence than others. But we all know that if you're working from a team concept, you can be the hottest running back or the best wide receiver or the sharpest quarterback. I'm using the football analogies because it's football season. Okay? It won't mean that your team is going to be successful if your team is not well-run, disciplined, trained, and coordinated. If you don't have that collective sense of leadership, people on the offense and defense know what to do. So we apply the same situation to defining quality or new African black leadership. All right. We have to take a collective approach. We have to develop a team approach. Okay. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. They will create false leadership. They will designate certain people to be leaders. They will look for certain people who may have some type of influence and build them up and appoint them or select them as the spokespeople or leaders for our community. But genuine leadership comes from the bottom up. It's not something that's appointed from the top down. Now, if you ask me about leadership today within the black community is diverse. You have grassroots leadership. You have youth leadership. You have leadership coming from the elders. You have leadership coming from black professionals. You have leadership coming from traditional black politicians. You have leadership coming from black business. But just because a person does well within their profession does not make them a leader of black people. You can have a PhD in astrophysics. That doesn't mean that because you're a black PhD in astrophysics that you're somehow transformed into a leader of black people. That just means that you're a leader within the field of astrophysics. And so, you know, we got to be careful about how we define black leadership within the context of struggle, within the context of fighting for freedom, fighting for self-determination, group determination. That it's not about your particular profession or your particular area that you specialize in. It's about what your interests are, who you speak for, and who you truly represent.
Right, right. Jay, I want to add on to that and say that generally when I look at leadership today, and I use the word leadership, but I have questions about whether or not it represents genuine leadership, is the preachers. I'm here in West Virginia, and I was also in Western Pennsylvania, and from my own personal experience, when it comes to black people and the Democratic and Republican parties, they generally look to the preachers to be able to guide their flocks toward Democratic or Republican parties. I mean, that's the way that I've seen it for years, and that's the way I continue to look at it and see it happening right before my eyes. You know, who's got the biggest church? You know, oftentimes the churches will let the politicians come up. They might come once a year, but they'll come to the churches and present themselves right around voting season. And both of you brothers probably are aware of it and have seen it.
That's
so
right.
These are some of the things that a third-party, independent party can protest and stop, make black people think, hold on, how long have we been doing this? Huh? How long have these people been doing this to us like this?
That's very true, and you're right. I mean, here in Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, in Western Pennsylvania, for example, you may know that for the state of Pennsylvania, there's a governor's race. Just like there are a lot of governor's races in different places around the country, there are a lot of other congressional races in different places around the country, what we refer to as the midterm elections. And so here, what you described has been happening. Okay, we've had some black politicians who black people do respect. They, in turn, have been able to bring in some white candidates and parade this white candidate up and down the black community, as if this white candidate, if he's elected the next governor, is going to somehow transform himself into the next Messiah or the savior for the black New African community in Pittsburgh, Allegheny County, and across the state of Pennsylvania, right? But those of us who've been around for a while, we know what the game is. We know that they bring this guy in. If black people do vote for him, the only power is going to be the power that's conferred upon the black politician or the black politician who gave him the inroad. Okay, that the black community, for the most part, is not going to see any substantial change in our material conditions. All right. For example, here, like in Pennsylvania, the unemployment rate for black folks is usually double that for white people. Okay. We got schools that get closed down. We got schools that get consolidated. We got the police that's off the chain. They beat us. They strangle us. They kill us. They murder us. They basically paralyzed a young brother named Leon Ford, right? They beat up another young brother named Jordan Miles. And in between those two, numerous cases, probably unreported cases of police brutality, terrorism, and misconduct. Okay? So there's no way on God's earth that this new governor, okay, is going to become the new savior or the new white messiah that's going to help the black New African community and take away all our troubles and all our problems. But that's the false flag and that's the false hope that's being projected around these times whenever you get to these election dates. All right, we got to challenge that. You know, we got to come up with something that says clearly this is what we expect from candidates. And if candidates cannot fulfill that, then we'll hold you accountable in the sense that we won't vote for you. And because we have our own independent political party, not only can we say that we won't vote for you, but the next go-around we'll vote and run somebody against you. Okay? So we don't have to be just like left in the limbo like, wow, woe is me. You know, people say, well, we got to vote for the lesser of two evils, Brother Khalid. And I say, well, the lesser of two evils, brother, is still evil. All right? Yeah. So we can't fall back on that. You know, we can't continue to fall back on that argument. That's a weak argument. We got to get up off our behind, start our own independent political parties and vehicles to move our own agenda for freedom and liberation forward. I tell people when a politician comes into your neighborhood and they talk about what they want to do for black people and how they want to improve our economic condition, the first question you should ask them, Well, what's your position on reparations then? If you want to substantially improve our economic condition, what is your official position on reparations? If you want to do something to deal with the criminal justice system, what's your official position on mass incarceration and ending the war on drugs? What's your official position dealing with political prisoners? You know, we got to ask them the real serious, hardcore questions.
Right.
We call for a National Civilian Police Review Board. What's your position on that? What's your position on prosecuting cops that terrorize the black community and the poor white communities as well? What's your position? Are you going to prosecute them? Are they going to get arrested? Or are you going to make sure they continue to get pay, okay, as they take a 2 or 3 week vacation? Okay, I mean, what is your real position on these type of issues? So that's where we're coming from. We're not looking for any white messiahs. We're not looking for any black faces in high places that's going to liberate us or free us. We got to free ourselves. We got to liberate ourselves. So we're going to use everything, whether it's voting, marching, protesting, demonstrating, petitions, fasting, throwing rocks, throwing bricks, whatever we got to do is what we're willing to do.
Do you find yourself having to deal with the obstruction set up by the inherent obstruction set up by the existing parties that are functioning there in city and county?
Yeah, no, brother, absolutely. You know, like the brother made reference to Pennsylvania and I think West Virginia in terms of in his past how he wanted to vote for a certain candidate, but he was restricted from voting for this candidate because in the state of Pennsylvania, for example, they have something called a closed primary. So here within the state of Pennsylvania, if you don't belong to that particular political party, you can't vote for that candidate. It's a closed primary. In certain states like California, they have an open primary. So you can be an independent, you can be a Republican, you can be a Democrat. Okay? You can vote for anybody in any primary if you choose. But Pennsylvania doesn't allow that. So that's one of the things that we want to challenge. We want to challenge that because we think that's oppressive. Okay?
That's right.
We think it's suppressive, and we think it's unfair. I should be able to vote for anybody I want to vote for in any primary, whether I belong to their party or not. We're all citizens of the state of Pennsylvania. All right. We also want to change some of the laws when it comes to being able to get your party or get your name placed on the ballot. For example, if you belong to one of the traditional two-party systems, just to illustrate, you may be required to collect 500 signatures. But if you belong to an independent party such as us, you may be required to collect 5,000 signatures before you can get placed on the ballot.
Right.
Once again, that's oppressive and it's suppressive because it suppresses any political difference or any political dissident. Okay? It basically supports the status quo. So we got to challenge that.
And now that could be a situation where that's a preclusion sanction as far as I'm concerned, right? So that could be a situation where you could actually possibly sue and take it to court and have the court rule on it on the discriminatory process there.
Possibility. I think people have already tried that from time to time. I don't know how successful it's been. You know, the legislative people who belong to our party would have to do some more research into that area. I'm not that very well versed on it. I do know that it's highly discriminatory, and I do know that it kind of, prohibits people from even coming out to the polls because a lot of folks don't understand all the ins and outs of voting in terms of who you can vote for and who you can't vote for based on primaries, based on general elections. All they know is, okay, I registered to vote. It says I'm registered to vote. I want to be able to go out and vote. So we need to encourage people who want to vote as much as possible, okay? And we don't want to support systems that prohibit people from going to the polls. We want to encourage people, not prohibit people from going, or not discourage people from going to the polls.
Are you on the ballot? Are you on the ballot this coming November in Allegheny County, sir?
No, we have no plans on being on the ballot for next month. It's just too soon. We just launched our party a few months ago, And so we're taking everything slowly but surely. We want to make sure that we have the type of infrastructure that can support us, supporting people from our party who are running for political office.
And on that note, brothers, I want to thank you both for joining us on another episode of the Main Source Network. And I want to give you both an opportunity to give out any contact information that you want to give out. If people want more information about the great work you all are doing in your respective communities before we close out the show.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll start first. John Kemet, Shabazz. I've been national chairman of West Virginia Black Unity Coalition, or Black Unity Coalition, since 2007. I'm on Facebook, and we're on Facebook under my name as well as West Virginia Black Unity Coalition. I'm looking at being able to do something along the line of dealing with expungement, restoration of rights for those people that have been incarcerated. I've found that in several states that people with felony records are precluded, and they don't even have the ability to present a petition for expungement of their records perpetually. So we're taking a look at that, to see whether or not we can actually make any difference on that. Right? I plan on using myself as the guinea pig, and so my email address is KEMETSHABZZ9@gmail.com, and you can send me an email and hit me up, man. And all right.
I appreciate you, brother. Brother Khalid.
Yes, my name is Brother Khalid Raheem. I'm the founder for the New African Independence Party. We're an independent black political party. Our focus is on organizing our people on the local level to strategically take control over their communities and neighborhoods. We come in the spirit of the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, the first Black Panther Party. We come in the spirit of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, which Raheem belonged to. We come in the spirit of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, founded by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. And we come in the spirit of the Republic of New Africa, founded in the 1960s as well. So we see ourselves as a convergence of all these great groups of organizations, including SNCC, by the way, groups that advocated for grassroots community self-control, grassroots community control over the police, over the political process, and over economic development. So you can check us out. We're at newafrican.org. That's New African spelled with a K in the African, newafrican.org. Check us out, read about us, check out our national platform, go to our page, membership organization, and join our party. You can find us on Facebook as well. We have 2 Facebook pages, one for our members and one for the general public. Look for New African Independence Party. I want to thank you, the listening audience, and I want to thank the brothers for inviting me to speak. I'm glad I was able to muster up the energy, brothers. It may not sound like it, but you know what my situation is and wasn't feeling too good. But I'm glad I had an opportunity to speak and share some things, and I'm glad I had an opportunity to meet the other brother on the line from West Virginia, and I hope we can continue to communicate as well.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And this was a very powerful show, and I want to thank you both for joining us on the Main Source Network. The Main Source Network, because you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. Be sure to join us next Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time for the Main Source Network. And as always, we leave you with the closing of the Messianic Afrikan Nation. Although we have been victimized, yet we are not victims. We are strong African people. And in the fullness of time, in the Creator's will, we shall rise again. As I leave you, my brothers and sisters, in the words of peace. Shalom Aleichem.